Yeah, I guess what I would start out with is how excited we are as coaches and how excited the guys are to get started. I think we've seen a lot of improvement, but you really don't know what that means until you start to face other people and you recognize what their improvement is. It's exciting with some of the new pieces we have and some of the evolution we've been able to make to see how that compares to the schedule we have this year, which is obviously going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be exciting. And now is the time to do that. Now is the time to do that. So we're going to go away for 2 weeks and the rest of the world's going to shut off and we're going to play football.
Questions for Coach? Jesse, why don't you start?
Mike mentioned the evolution beyond just having new players from the portal or freshman guys. What would you say that evolution is, or what do you think will be most different about the defense this season from what people saw here?
So as you learn your guys and what they do best, I think you can do a better job of taking advantage of who they are. I think that we had a hard time being as multiple up front as we really would have liked to have been because everybody was learning each other and learning the scheme. So hopefully there's a lot more front multiplicity. That's what we feel like one of our cornerstones is. I think our third down identity wasn't as clean as we wanted it to be. And partially that was, again, that was learning the guys, figuring out what we do best, but also it's the first time installing it, right? You can't do everything. So I think the understanding of our third down identity has really grown. Some of our situational calls have grown because year one, sometimes it's the basics. So there will be some multiplicity, but you probably have to be at a high level to recognize those differences too.
Go ahead, Colin.
Mike, one of the things that Luke said at media days was that there are going to be a lot more live sessions, a lot more full tackling here in training camp. What does that do for a defense that you're getting a lot more of those reps early on versus waiting for week one kind of?
A lot of times you talk in recruiting to defensive recruits about what a great deal it is for them to play for a defensive head coach. And Coach Fick clearly is a overall head coach, but obviously we know what his background is, right? There's a lot of places where you can't have any live tackling in camp, where you can't touch any skill player. And it's pretty hard to get good at tackling the athletes that we have to face nowadays if you don't get to practice it. I always talk about this, right? If you're a basketball player, a jump shot's probably a pretty important part of your repertoire. If you're really committed to it, how many days out of the year can you practice your jump shot? Well, the answer is 365. Tackling someone to the ground, how many days a year can you practice that? Sometimes it's only the 12 games, right? What else is there in the world that say, okay, this is one of the most important parts of your job, you need to be very, very good at it, but we're not gonna let you practice, right? So it's essential that we have some of those times. It's great that coach, and it's good for both sides of the ball when it comes to ball security as well as tackling. But we are trying to find ways to be great tacklers, even though we can't do it 365 days out of the year, but it sure is nice to have it be more than just the 12, 13, 14 that happen on game days.
Coach, what's it like to have a guy like Hunter Wooler on the sidelines, standing on the field for you guys?
I am really excited about our leadership right now. I am very excited about Hunter, Jake Chaney, the names could be stacked beyond that, but specifically Hunter. Here's a dude who, A, understands ball and absolutely loves it. B, when your best players are your leaders, that's much more impactful, right? C, it's very, very, very important to him, and that rubs off big time too. He's a guy that can come off the field and communicate what he's seeing. That's really important as well. He can help everybody on the defense digest any adjustments that you're trying to make, but it's not just Hunter. I mean, like I mentioned Jake Chaney as well in the linebacker room. These guys are leaders, and they're intense leaders when it's appropriate too, that if necessary are going to back people against the wall and say, no, these are the standards of the Badger defense. So it's really cool that those guys, amongst others, are leading our crew.
Mark in the front on the right.
Coach, just can you talk about the inside linebacker room, how that might be a little different this year, and just at this stage, what you kind of seen from Jaheim and what he might be able to bring to the table?
We have a couple rooms that are gonna look a little bit different, and that's really exciting. And probably the inside linebacker room and the outside linebacker room are first and foremost in terms of how different they'll look. But inside linebacker room, Jaheim Thomas is a guy who has played a lot of football, has produced at all levels of college football, and is also a guy who knows us, knows Coach Fickle, knows myself, understands the expectation. Unlike most new guys walking in the door, he truly understands the culture. So that transition was really easy. Tackett Curtis is a guy who, quite honestly, if you ask me, even though I wasn't here at the beginning, he probably belonged here from the get-go because he's a Wisconsin type of dude. And he's a bang your head against the wall football junkie that also loves it and wants to study it. So you feel like, and there needs to be more guys getting reps, and we feel like we're building that. You know, we can't have, you name the position. I'm going to outside backers now because there's new faces there, but CJ Getz played 800 snaps last year or something like that. Well, can you truly, at this level of ball, be at your physical best if you play that often? We need to, as defensive coaches, and the players need to take the reins and prove they're ready for it, be able to play 22, 25, 28 guys so that we're playing our best at the end. And that's the key to those new faces and the competition within rooms.
Evan in the back.
Coach, you mentioned you wanted to be more multiple up front. You picked up an addition in the transfer portal over the summer, Brandon Lane. What do you hope he can bring to this defense to, potentially take it to another level?
I don't think it's any shot that defensive line, interior defensive line in particular, we needed to keep growing in terms of depth. That's a position that absolutely needs to be fresh every single snap because there's nothing else like it in sports where 700 pounds are just lined up to hit you in the mouth every single play. And if you even relax, you look foolish, right? He is a big, strong dude that, quite honestly, I think can have an impact because, well, A, he's a good football player, but B, it just gives us more ability to make sure we keep bringing in new, fresh faces, so we're the ones doing the pounding, play in and play out when it comes to up front. There's no secret in a Fickle team. It's going to be about winning up front, and we're an O-line, D-line driven program. So, yeah.
Go ahead.
Coach, you talked about Hunter's leadership earlier. Can you say the same thing about Ricardo Allman, especially coming off the shoulder injury this offseason?
Yeah, Ricardo is, without question, a phenomenal leader too. And one of the things he does is he's constantly working. And even when it's times that there's no coaches around, you might, on a Saturday, one of your few weekends off, roll through, walk by the indoor, and he's out there doing drills by himself or running drills with the defensive backs. And that example of work and that, hey, you have to approach this serious, just being the athlete that you are, doesn't get it done at this level, is big time. And again, when your best players are the leaders, meaning we can show stats that, hey, he led the NCAA in picks last year, and look what he's doing. Maybe there's a correlation, right? You have some testimony there for the other guys. So that's going to be big for us.
Mike, one of the things that Luke talked about last week was some of the struggles that the defense had with blitzing last year. Do you feel like you've got more guys that are going to be more proven or more successful blitzers coming into year two with the additions you've made?
One of our focus for the spring and also for this fall is affecting the quarterback. Do feel like last year we got into a pattern where the pressure needed to be manufactured a little bit more. I think the work that the defensive line and outside backers have put in will allow us to affect the quarterback more without having to blitz, first of all. And then when that's the case, your blitzes naturally become more impactful when you use them. I will also say, though, the blitz intent and the blitzers have improved as well. You know, with some of the new faces, but also with the work that's put in and the confidence that's grown.
Zach?
Going back to the defensive line, James Thompson Jr., what have you seen from him this offseason that you hope he takes the next step, and what do you kind of look forward to when he's on the field?
Yeah, James and Kurt Neal both have taken great leadership and steps forward in terms of their belief and their ability to impact the game, right? James has always been a guy that has the size and strength and works very, very hard. But I think where he's taken the big step is the mindset of, I'm going to be a game changer, I'm going to be disruptive, I am not going to just do my job, but I'm going to impact things out here. Beware when I'm on the field. And that mentality is a critical step up front in particular. So I'm really excited to see that. I think Kurt's taken that same step. I think that do your job is, yeah, that's important, but that's not what we're about. We're football players. Let's go make some things happen. And I think the mindset's there with those guys.
Mike, in spring, we saw Austin Brown play slot a lot, and then towards the end of spring, Max Lofi kind of moving into that role. How do you view Austin's role, and how do you view the nickel spot?
I think Austin and Max can both be fantastic nickels. I think they bring different maybe strengths. If you were to say what's their strengths in order 1, 2, and 3, those might be slightly different, which is good. It's like having the 1-2 punch at tailback. You got the big back, you got the speed back. Austin, he will continue in fall camp to play multiple spots. But the bottom line is, a lot of people have to do that for you to make sure you get your best players on the field at all times, right? We're talking about we need 22, 25, 28 guys to play on Saturday, but when it really comes down to crunch time, you need your best guys on the field, whether that's in the red zone, whether that's in the fourth quarter, whatever that is. When it's crunch time, you need your best players on the field. And as the year progresses with bumps and bruises, there needs to be some versatility in players to make sure you get your best players on the field. So I would imagine you're going to see both those guys at nickel, and I love the strengths that they both have. But Austin is definitely a guy that's going to have to practice and be able to play multiple positions.
Mike, one of the big changes NCAA-wide this year was the use of the in-helmet communication. Just as a defensive coordinator and play caller, what's the impact for you being able to, just speak directly to, whoever you decide to put that green dot on?
Yeah, it's interesting because as you talk to a lot of NFL players that wear the green dot or NFL coaches, probably the biggest warning you get is the less the better, right? You can't be in these guys' heads as they're trying to play ball. The other big difference in college and pros is, very seldom do you see a huddle. So you cannot rely on giving the call to the Mike backer and then the Mike backer telling the defense. There still has to be signals. So what I really envision that'll be a help is you can give quick reminders of what's the situation. Quick reminders of the personnel that they're facing or where the sticks are at. You can give quick situational reminders and make sure that gets echoed across the board. But you can't rely on that for calls because of the tempos that you face in college football. And you certainly can't be in a situation where a guy's focusing on you instead of the guys he's trying to face on the field. The other thing that I think is real interesting, one of our goals as a staff, defensively, we talked about it a bunch, is, hey, let's try to be the best at the new stuff. No one's going to be an absolute expert at the new stuff, but let's try to be better than everybody else. So what's the new stuff? It's that in-helmet communication. It's the use of the iPads on the sideline. There's some new rules in terms of who's allowed to be on the field as coaches. I think there's some new rules about numbers of headsets you can use. No one's going to know what's exactly the best, but let's put the time and effort to make sure that we do it better than the other guys, whether it's perfect or not.
Jake?
So Mike, you had some, it was half the 2024 scholarship class come in as, early enrollees, you had the other 11 come in during the summer along with, you know, Brandon Lane as a spring transfer, just during this time where you're, you know, it's baptism by fire or drinking out of a fire hose, how do you evaluate some of those younger players or those spring, you know, transfers to see if they can contribute? You know, when you talk about interior defensive line, like whether it's Lane or even Dylan Johnson.
So the guys that come in the spring, there's two things. You have a nice long opportunity to recognize how quickly they learn and how quickly they pick things up. But you also get an opportunity to force them to hit that wall and maybe even start to sink a little bit, knowing that we're gonna get to do this again in the summer and the fall so that we don't hit that wall. You know, that's the advantage of coming in early. The guys that come in the summer, those guys you probably, I should say probably, we limit their calls. We don't try to put them on the same call sheet as the veterans, because if you did do that, it would be very hard to evaluate where their skill set is. Okay, so the advantage of coming in early, and we had a bunch of them, which is really good, we did force them to learn everything, hit a wall, then we got to hit it again in the summer, and we get to hit it again in fall camp. New guys, it'll be a little bit more, let's keep this simple, and let's see what they got.